The $1,000,000 question: how do entrepreneurs transition from self-employed to owning a business that turns a profit? My name is Chris Waters, and this podcast has the $1,000,000 answer. Welcome to CEO Secrets. Hey guys, it's your host, Chris Waters of CEO Secrets. I'm excited to be joined with Grier Allen, the founder of BoomTown, one of the leading CRM platforms in the real estate space. I was lucky enough to be an early customer of BoomTown back in the 2009-2010 era when there weren't a lot of solutions in the real estate space. And BoomTown has grown to be one of the leading CRM providers in the entire industry. Grier regularly speaks at Edmond and all the leading conferences around the country. You guys are the behemoth in the real estate space, and most importantly, have been able to maintain it as other people have been coming in, driving down the price and doing various things to crowd the CRM space. So congrats on your success, Grier. Thank you so much for being on the show today.
Absolutely, Chris. Thank you so much for having me, man. I'm looking forward to this.
So, I don't want to botch this story. I've heard you say it a few times, but my understanding is you started BoomTown taking out some money on that first house you owned.
I did. Absolutely. Yeah. Back in 2006 is when we got started. And just a little of my background, Chris, I grew up in a family of real estate agents. So my brother and my dad, both in real estate, and developed a passion early on, before even, going off to school. And I worked for a large residential brokerage here in Charleston for a couple of years out of college, and then started a digital advertising agency after that until 2006, and really just wanted to get back and focus in real estate specifically and build a product, because I knew building a product would be a way to impact more lives within the industry. And so we were self-funded from the get-go. We spent all of 2006 really just trying to understand where we could make a real impact on the industry, given the knowledge and experience and skill sets that we had as a founding team. And in 2007, right before the bubble burst, actually took out a home equity line of credit to fund the business. So it was
scary.
Yeah, it was scary. We had a lot less. Didn't have kids, didn't have a wife at the time, and my wife that now was my girlfriend then, so she had a pretty good paying job. So she kind of was my sugar mama. So, but yeah, we self-funded it all to the equity in our home. So we've always believed in the power of home ownership, and that's just one very, very big example. We wouldn't be here talking today without the power of home ownership.
You're a young guy. When did you graduate college?
Graduated in 2002.
And so you had a couple of years digital ad agency world, and I'm assuming did you come from the product development space, development?
I did.
You did?
Yeah.
Okay.
I do a lot of mentoring and with a lot of early stage entrepreneurs. And so that's one thing that, was an advantage for me going into this space, is I had the domain knowledge of real estate, being around my dad and my brother and all the research that we poured in 2006. And as well as the ability to actually write software myself. And so I did computer science at Clemson, and go Tigers. And so that was an incredibly valuable piece, because that's one stumbling block I see a lot of people have if they're going into the technology space, is having that technical co-founder or that technical capability in-house.
Yeah.
It's very hard if you're trying to outsource that.
So, something just like reflecting back on, the last 12 years now, something I felt like was really distinct and a competitive advantage for you guys was the user interface. It was beautiful, so well organized. I mean, I have a Salesforce instance, and, spent 7 figures on it, have a Salesforce administrator, developer, have all these apps and HubSpot, and it's a beast. I still have a BoomTown platform though, and my salespeople like BoomTown more than Salesforce.
Absolutely.
So how did you find somebody to help you build the UI side of the product to make it? It's top notch. And you probably already know this, but I feel like all the competitors the last 10 years have basically ripped off your user interface, right? So you guys are pioneers with the user interface, and you salespeople suck at tech adoption and just using the damn tool, but somehow you made it very organized from a UI UX perspective. How did that come about? Is that you? Did you partner with somebody?
That's a great question, and that's sort of the a good lead into team building and how important that is, and how important that has been to the success of BoomTown. So I was 3 months into starting BoomTown, and I knew that I could build the product. I knew that we could research the industry. I knew that we could over time working hard on defining a business plan, really, and researching, with potential customers, finding product market fit. The one piece that I didn't have in terms of my skill set was user experience design. And so this was back in 2006. But I truly believed in the necessity of a great user experience back. And actually, I Googled user experience design, Charleston, South Carolina, and this is back in 2006. And there was only 2 results. And if you can imagine, Google only putting up 2 results for a search. That's how user experience just wasn't a term back then, really. One of the people that popped up on that list was Cooper Bain, our co-founder. And I met Cooper. We were set to meet for about an hour. I was going to hire him to do some consulting work on a project that I was working on for a large broker in Augusta, Georgia. This is prior to us really, defining what the product would be for BoomTown. And we had a 1-hour meeting on the block, and it quickly turned into a 4-hour meeting. And we really just aligned very much in what we believed was the cocktail to make a great product. And it wasn't just about, providing a great experience for consumers. It was also about, thinking about agents. Are they going to adopt this? You can almost think of an agent as a consumer, essentially, in terms of their technology adoption in 2006. And so that's where we spent a lot of time and focus on that. And that's where a lot of, I'd say the steel sharpening steel, Cooper and I going back and forth with one another on what was right down to the pixel level. And that really was a core tenet of BoomTown from the very get-go.
Interesting. So we fast forward 14, 15 years now. You guys have hundreds of employees. There was a CRM that was a competitor to you guys, still kind of is, called Commissions Inc. Sold a couple of years ago for $237 million, if I'm not mistaken. And you guys are obviously much bigger, et cetera. So you got, I don't know, I'm just throwing out a number here. You got a company where it's, call it $500 million, something like that. You have a lot of money invested in the real estate space and the success of agents. I'm kind of curious, there's a lot of money coming into space, a lot of money coming into real estate, people ultimately trying to turn real estate agents into basically Uber drivers. Right. Like the way I see it is, Zillow bought Showing Time for $500 million. I'm sure you saw that. And that's an interesting strategic move, because at a certain point, if Zillow can integrate the lockboxes with the app, let consumers self-tour properties. Zillow's a licensed broker now. I mean, they're selling a lead at the bottom of the funnel, and they could legit become a pretty big marketplace to, greatly diminish the role of the agent, and have a pretty big negative impact on the teams out there. What's your take on that? Like, I guess twofold, like for people listening to this show that are in the real estate industry, have a brokerage, have a team, how do they prepare to compete with that? Like, what are you guys doing on the product side to help customers stay relevant and, not get in a position where they're having to, become some kind of referral partner? And by the way, these referral partner deals are not like what people are used to. The right. Agents are collecting, like, I don't know if you heard about this, but Opendoor, on their back end of their platform, they have a deal set up where the consumer does a Zoom session with an Opendoor agent after the consumer has already walked through the house. And when the agent does that face-to-face Zoom session, they're walking them through how to write a contract. And they'll do 4 to 5 Zoom sessions a week and convert 40 to 50% of those into contracts written.
Wow.
And they're paying the agents 18% of gross revenue if it was a 3% deal. I had a buddy of mine send me this video of them doing it. He's like, you won't even believe this. He was a referral partner that was typically paying out a 35% referral fee, and then they flipped the script, right? And the agent doesn't even see the house. They don't even meet the customers face to face. It's all via Zoom.
Wow. No, that's really interesting. I hadn't heard of that. I guess my take on this, Chris, is I do believe that that real estate is inherently local. I do believe that there are going to be players out there like Open Door and Zillow that are going to continue to try to look for ways to disintermediate and capture more of the market share. But if you look at most agents in terms of what drives their business, it's sphere of influence and past clients and relationships, that they have developed over the years. And really where BoomTown sits is sort of in this space where we're trying to empower the local brands, and from the very get-go. Our mission has been to make real estate agents successful. And I do think that there is going to be a time where a lot of these folks that are sort of living off of Zillow leads or whatever portal leads, or let's call them referral leads, and they're one referral partner is making up 75% of their business, that there'll be increased in leverage that those lead providers have over those teams, and they'll have to figure out new ways to generate their own business. And that's I think where BoomTown is sits today. What we do is we generate leads on behalf of our customers to their own branded website, and continue to drive them back to that consumer experience, keeping them off the portals, or at least keeping them engaged with the agent on that side. But I think that they're going to have to look for different ways to generate business in order to keep the share of wallet that they deserve.
Yeah. Do you see BoomTown adding on to the BoomTown app a self-tour option for consumers to use?
Potentially. It's something I don't think that's in the near term future. It's certainly not something that's on the roadmap today.
Yeah.
But we'll just we have to keep up with what the consumer wants. And one of the things that I see, Chris, is the consumer does want more choice. The consumer does want an iBuyer option versus a full service option versus maybe something like what you're talking about, which is lower touch option. And I think that's going to be the future of where this industry goes, is being able, the winners are going to be the ones that are able to offer those different choices to the consumer.
Mm-hmm. So let me go a couple steps back. You've got hundreds of employees now.
We do.
And, you don't get to hundreds of employees unless you're a good leader and you surround yourself with good leaders.
That's right.
Tell me about, in maybe the early days or at what stage did you start bringing in key leadership besides your co-founder to start building out departments and things like that? What were your biggest ahas? Like what would you say is like your greatest secret to identifying, selecting, getting the right leader in place? Like what's the greatest aha you've had over the last 15 years?
Well, I can tell you, Chris, that it's been trial by fire ever since we got we came out of stealth mode, so to speak, in 2008. Which was an interesting time to be starting out in the industry right after the financial crisis hit us. But the product was very well received in the marketplace. A lot of word of mouth spread about what we had built and brought to the market. And honestly, we had the tiger by the tail. And so right out of the gates, it was hyper growth is how I describe it. And we had to make some decisions quickly, and we made some early hires, and got to a team of about 25. We were as high as number 8 in the software category on the Inc. 500 list. We were on the Inc. 500 list for 3 years in a row. So a lot of scaling went on in those early years, but I think 2012 is where we started saying, okay, we need somebody with great experience in terms of scaling this business, not somebody that that can handle sort of what we are today, but looking 3 years ahead, who has scaled a business from call it 5 million in revenue to 50 million in revenue. And so we started to go down that path of sort of building out our making our first executive hire, which is our COO.
Was that the position when you posted the job ad, COO?
Chief Operating Officer.
Yeah.
That's right. Yep. And so we were
looking. Was the first hire a slam dunk, or did you have to go through a few?
We still have our first COO here at BoomTown, and he's done a fantastic job. I wish all the hires would have been that lucky to nail on the first go round.
Yeah.
But as we continued to scale, we started looking for people at the departmental level. Starting to look for a CTO, a head of sales, a head of marketing, and these were all roles that we had some situations where we made the hire and then 6 months later realized that we made the wrong hire. And I think that was pretty soon we figured out that this is more on us than the candidates that we brought in. And so we really started to study, how to make the right hires. And
what did you read? What were what books were you reading? Who was your mentor, coach, inspiration to getting the right people on deck?
Sure. I think one of the biggest books in terms of how I think about recruiting and selecting is a book called Who. It's GH Smart is the organization that writes that book. It's they also did top grading, I believe.
Yep.
So if y'all are familiar with any of that, but the Who methodology is what we use, and really it helps you basically to think about not just the job description, the position description as they call it, but to also think about a scorecard for what you're looking for, and that scorecard really has call it 3 to 5 defined outcomes that you're looking for that are measurable, that you can basically look at each candidate that you have and sort of grade them on an A to B scale, A to C scale in terms of how you feel they're suited to accomplish that particular goal based on their past experience. So I think that book has made the biggest impact for us in terms of making the right hires.
So one of the ahas you mentioned a minute ago was find somebody that's already done it, somebody that's already successfully scaled that can, from call it 5 million to 50 million. So that's a key nugget you mentioned. And then the second key little secret I heard you mention is clearly define the 3 KPIs that you hold them accountable to. And then
Absolutely.
And then it's ultimately a black and white, yes, no type situation at the end of 6 months. Either you're hitting it or you're not.
That's right. Another big thing for us was just, filling up the pipeline. We're in Charleston. We're based in Charleston, South Carolina. A lot has changed more recently. We've become a lot more, hybrid focused in terms of, where we're hiring key executives or any role really. But, really, we went through a couple of different search firms. So we use external search firms, but also, leverage our networks, the networks of the A players that we have on our leadership team to help recruit and find the right talent to bring into the pipeline. And we launch a national search for any sort of key leadership role that we're doing, and that's $100,000 type of search that they're running.
When you think about your leadership team, and obviously we're in the day of COVID, lots of people want to work remote. What leadership roles do you feel like could be remote, and which ones do you think need to be on the ground next to the team?
With the exception of, sales, I think most, can be remote in this time. And honestly, I think sales can too. I do think that there's a lot that goes into kind of being face to face with your sales team. But we've made a few acquisitions, as Chris. We brought on Brokerage this year, and we're really excited about integrating that into our core solution, being able to provide sort of an end-to-end front office and back office experience for our customers. And so we have a sales team on the West Coast. We've got we've always had a sales team up in the San Francisco area, but I'd say that we've proven through COVID that, with the right communication style and intentionality around how we connect with one another, just about any role can be remote at this point.
Cool. What about offshore? Do you think you could push the limits on offshoring leadership or, maybe higher up positions? Have you tested that? Any feedback on testing offshoring to other countries' key leadership roles?
I think that being in the same or similar time zone is pretty critical. I think that's a very important piece because I do believe that communication and alignment with the leadership team is critical. And so I don't think that we'd ever look at that. We actually use some offshore consultants early on in BoomTown's history for some projects that kind of predated the product itself.
Yeah.
But those didn't work out for us. Now I know that a lot of other companies leverage offshoring and they do it well. But for us, I think people, on the leadership team appreciate being able to drop some time on somebody's calendar throughout the workday and have a healthy work-life balance of not having to get on at 9 p.m. or 10 p.m. at night to have those conversations.
Kudos on Brokerment, man. That's, we went and researched my real estate group did. We researched all the best back-end accounting, reporting, transaction management platforms, and it was the best by far.
Thank you. Yeah, no, we're super excited about it. I mean, we did that about 3 or 4 years ago, Chris, and Brokerman at the time was just focused on transaction management, and to see what they had built in the last 3 years and how much they'd innovated around a full back office suite of transaction management, commission automation, which is one of the most sought after pieces of what they do, and how that flows directly into the accounting module. And now you can pay out agents directly next day through ACH payments. It's very, very slick, and we're really excited to have them as part of the family.
That's awesome. So would you say, like, in the maybe the first, I don't know, like I want people that are listening to this to understand like where the roadblocks are from a revenue perspective. So for example, I think most people can probably like grind their way to like 5 million in gross revenue. And then like, you got to get some good players to get 10 million. And then it seems like there's a whole nother roadblock to go from like 10 to 50. For you, what were those roadblocks at each of those revenue stages? Maybe yours were a little different, but we talked about leadership, you talked about early years of product development, product design, things like that. What other kind of big ahas did you have as you guys grew revenue?
Yeah, I mean, in the early days, Chris, I mean, I'm talking about probably the first 3 years from 2009 to 2012, maybe 2011. In those years, we were such a small team that everybody was in the same room, essentially. Wow. And you could literally just, departments were 3 people max, And so, communication was not an issue, and really, having defined teams really wasn't even necessary. We had a very, very flat organizational structure at that point in time. And I think that was the first, going from that to a more defined structure was the first real roadblock in terms of that I experienced. Certainly knew how to build a great product and build the technology behind it and sell it. And, but when it came to, how do we do this at scale? And that's, I think that, that $5 to $10 million mark that you're talking about is where you really start to have to bring in leadership that, is thinking day in, day out about their specific function, whether that's customer success or sales or marketing or, or product development, et cetera. That was the first real, and I think we were probably closer to 10 million, and probably it was, because we were growing so fast and we were succeeding despite ourselves at that point, and so that was probably the first period of time where, where things seemed a little bit out of control. The growth was so fast, growing 1,000+% year over year. It was insane.
Wow.
And so it was a crazy time. That was certainly one of those points at which, we had to stop and not only think about just the team, the leadership team itself, but also think about, our culture. Everybody in the company at the size, 25 employee size, realized that we had something unique and special as far as the culture and the mission. Everybody was bought into this mission of we exist to make real estate agents successful. And I didn't want to lose that as we scaled. And so, that's when we decided to define our core values. That was, a lot of energy and effort to do because we had everybody's involvement in that process. But I'm so glad the return on investment on that through the years has been amazing because, when you include everybody in that process, you're getting the buy-in from the ground up. You're not pushing something down to people. It's their core values, right?
What was the next big sticking point for you guys? Like, what was the next big revenue ceiling, proverbial ceiling, where you felt stuck?
I'd say right at about the $20 to $25 million mark, and that mark, that was when we started to really go out and try to hire key executives in each respective function of the business. And this is where we made a couple of errors, in terms of those first hires that we made. And they were brutal. And, the company that I mentioned earlier, GH Smart, I think that what they say is and this is the people that wrote Who, a hiring mistake will cost you 15 times the base salary of the hire that you make. And that can add up really quickly. And I think that number could be even larger if you don't identify the wrong fit within that first 6-month period.
What was the aha? Obviously you don't mention names, but like, what was the position? What was, what went wrong? What can other people learn from that mistake?
Yeah, we went through, a CTO. We went through a head of marketing. We went through a head of sales. Our learnings through that were not that, that we hired someone that turned out to be somebody different. It was, we didn't do the right, we didn't put what needed to be put in to make the right selection. We didn't, we got fatigued in the process of hiring. We basically got to a point in that hiring process where we settled, for somebody that we thought might be a decent fit, but you can always point back to the very beginning and where you make that hiring decision and basically say, hey, we knew this, we knew this from the get-go. And so
what was that bullet point? To be more specific, like what's the bullet point that you missed?
Don't let search fatigue dictate your hiring decisions.
But like the candidate, right? Like the individual candidates you hired in those roles that didn't work out, what were the characteristics or the actions they took that ultimately made them a bad hire? You know what I mean?
Very different in each one of those instances. So we learned something new from each one of those. But what I would say is that at BoomTown, we hire for culture, and having the person that we know is going to collaborate with the team, with the leadership team in the right way, is the rest of the leadership team is absolutely critical to their success, no matter how great they are and what they do. Our culture will spit somebody out very quickly if they're not if they don't fit from a culture standpoint. And I think going back to what I said earlier, making sure that they have the experience of scaling from one level to where you're going, where you see the company going over the next 3 to 5 years is another critical piece. And do they truly feel impassioned by the mission of the company? I think that's another very important thing. Is you're going to be spending a lot of long hours, really focused on, in our case, making real estate agents successful. Are you aligned with that? And asking the right questions to flesh that out is absolutely critical.
So culture is a really tricky thing. It's ultimately how people feel about each other, right? And the feeling they get being a part of the organization. And so you can go through the interview process and have multiple people on your team interview, but then like they show up and it's just not the same, vibe and feeling everybody had during the interview. So did you guys put something in place to like make that sure that didn't happen again? Like, was there some little silver bullet in the interview process to make sure the people would gel?
This is kind of what I was talking about earlier about, just having a bottoms up culture where everybody feels it's their responsibility to continue to maintain the culture going forward. Actually, this is not something that we push down to, our frontline people, but a group of folks came to us and said, hey, we want to have a culture interview as part of the hiring process. And they wrote down all of our core values, all 8 core values, and came up with questions that would help them to identify, does this person, exhibit this value in their day-to-day lives or in their past job experience? And they put them into a big bucket and, cut them up and put them into a bucket. And so for each job interview, they would just take one out the bucket and have a 45-minute culture interview where they frontline people, managers, directors, whatever, would be asking, and this is all the way up to the executive team. Executive hires would go through this process as well, and they'd give us either the thumbs up or the thumbs down. And I think that has helped us in a couple of scenarios that either we knew that they would not pass that test, and we didn't continue conversations with them. But it's a gut check for us. But also, we've had a few times where leadership candidates have failed that culture interview.
Yeah, man, that's a big nugget right there. Culture interview. That's a big nugget. Yeah. And when you put a lot of things like that in place, I can see how interview fatigue can kick in, especially when you need somebody. You need someone in that role like yesterday, and like
so much better to wait, Chris. That's what I've learned is it's so much better to wait until you have the right person. And boy, it's painful during the time where you don't have that person in the seat. Mm-hmm. But if you bring the wrong one in, you start thinking about that 15 times salary that it's going to cost you to make that sort of mistake. And that's one thing that I will never go back to is, saying, hey, we need somebody right now. Let's just bring this person in and see if they work. It just never works out.
To change the subjects a little bit, I remember a couple of years ago, you guys, I think, took some investment from a private equity group, $20 million or something, right? I don't know what it was. But looking back on it, was that a good decision, knowing what you know now?
It was. It absolutely was. I think, we were pretty picky about who we were going to bring onto our board as well. We saw it as it's a marriage. You can't get a divorce from your investors and people that are on your board. And so we, sort of took the same learnings that we had from, surrounding yourself with the right people to that level as well. So we really weren't looking at, the business card or necessarily the logo that was on that business card. It was more about the person that we were going to be dealing directly with on our board when we made the decision to bring in those outside, partners. And they have served as tremendous thought partners to me and the executive and the rest of the leadership team at BoomTown. And, I can't speak highly enough of the folks that we brought onto the board to help us as thought partners going forward.
I've heard you say you don't have any interest in selling BoomTown. And if you have an equity partner, is there any concern that they're going to want to get a return, right, from their equity?
Eventually they will. There's no doubt about that. But there's a lot of ways you can do that. We can recapitalize the business. We can take them off the cap table if that's one thing we need to do. But that was one of the things that we looked for. One of the core tenets that we were looking for is that we were looking to build an enduring business in space, and we didn't want to have the timelines that are typically imposed by a standard venture capital or private equity group. And so that was one of the deciding factors that we had going into this. And in Susquehanna, for example, they don't have limited partners, which typically a venture capital or a growth equity firm has limited partners that invest their pension funds, all kinds of, and they guarantee some sort of outcome for that portfolio over the course of 3 to 5 year period, typically. And Susquehanna, their company, started the private equity shop, so they don't have any limited partners in that operation. So that was one of the reasons why we chose them, because they were ultimately into building enduring businesses with founders and being very founder friendly.
So on the topic of private equity, a billionaire with a group called Vista, you know who I'm talking about, he has been buying up real estate technology platforms out the yin yang. Vista bought Lone Wolf. What else did they? I heard they just took down another real estate platform. They've got to have invested at 9 figures in real estate tech. Now that you're the juggernaut of the space, and so many people are just pouring money in, like it's insane. Like, what's the next big grandiose plan for BoomTown to stay on top? Like, obviously the brokerment and, tacking on some of these leading applications is obviously one part of the strategy, but like, what's the futuristic side of Grier Allen say about where this business is going 10 years from now to stay ahead of the curve and maintain your seat at the top of the tech space?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, and really one of the things that I want to be able to see 15 years from now. We're about 15 years into this, and we've been fortunate enough to get to really the top of the game here in terms of what we do, and I want to look back 15 years from now and say BoomTown is still at the top in terms of what we do, and so in terms of what I see as the future, and we're going to have to obviously continue to innovate. This industry is changing rather rapidly for real estate, I'd say, and there's a lot of change that's come. I think that integrations and sort of becoming sort of the central hub of our customers' business is going to be an absolutely critical part of what we do going forward, but also building and building additional functionality, features, products that meet the needs of our customers is going to be absolutely critical as well. And, like you just mentioned, bringing Brokerment in-house, as a true back office platform and combining that with the front office platform really gives us a lot of room to innovate across the whole entire spectrum. Yeah. And so that was a highly strategic acquisition as opposed to other companies that are private equity based that look to, maybe slam together, 5 to 6 companies and exit that business in 3 to 5 years. It's a good strategy for a private equity firm, but we like to be much more strategic in terms of our acquisitions and really think through how that creates a better experience for our customers.
If you were starting over today, BoomTown didn't exist. It's like 2006, but it's obviously 2021. It's a little bit like you're the founder of Instagram out of your college dorm room and you're competing with Facebook, right? In the real estate space, that's kind of what it's like. And so it's like for the small guys, where does the opportunity exist to pull one over on the Facebook, if you will, like Instagram did? Like where can the little engine that could, find opportunity to grow and have success? Like if you were starting over right now, what would you do?
We're starting over right now. It's a different environment that we're in right now.
Massively different.
Yeah, it's a totally different environment. I'm really intrigued by what's happening with national expansion teams. I'm really intrigued with what's happening with other models like Side, for example, which I think is getting incredibly large valuation on kind of software they're providing. It's pretty crazy, right?
Yeah.
But I don't think the mission would change, Chris. I think where we're focused and where my passion lies is in making real estate agents more successful. Yeah. I think that that I might take a slightly different tack to the technology and services and the packaging of those technologies and services, but that's our passion. We want to innovate and build technology that makes real estate agents more successful. We want to innovate now across both the front office and the back office. We want to bring tech-enabled services to market that sort of take the mundane tasks off the plate of our customers so that they can focus on scaling and growing their businesses. And so,
I want you to think really hard about this. So there's a book Peter Thiel wrote called 0 to 1. And he says, if you're going to go into an existing category, you've got to improve on it by 10x. Your only other alternative to go from 0 to 1 and be the market juggernaut is to create a new category within the industry. So as of recent, iBuyers, the last 5 years, that's been a category, right? Like, what would be the category if you had to start all over, what would be the category you would want to jump on? Or you would create? What would be the category you'd create? Get the entrepreneurial wheels turning.
Yeah, like I said, I think there's a lot of, kind of thoughts that I have around just, what is happening? What do teams really need to scale nationally and do what they do from market to market? And I'm not going to give you everything, Chris, but I think that there's some thoughts and ideas that could be category defining things that are opportunities for BoomTown and for others.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. I think that the industry will change. I think more consolidation is going to occur. I think more the more professional leaders within this industry are going to continue to, kind of squeeze out the folks in the industry that aren't really in this, for a full-time career, aren't really as passionate about providing the consumer with the best experience. And so I think we're focused on the right target market, and have been for the last 15 years. And like I said, I think there's just be some different models and approaches that I would take to serving them.
So your brother runs a really successful group, the Casino Group.
He does.
And what's kind of interesting of what's going on in like the brokerage, essentially the service world of real estate is you've got people out there that have these very efficient operations, sales operations. They've got, good technology they're using like BoomTown. And then you got these, behemoths over here like the Zillow, the Redfin, and they've got tech, but they don't have it figured out on the boots on the ground salespeople, the operation side, the training, all the stuff that goes on behind the scenes to make deals happen. What is that intersection, right? Because it's like Zillow's trying to get over here, the brokers are trying to get over here. Like,
Right.
what's the intersection? What does that intersection look like? Because ultimately, if you can figure out that intersection, you could beat the behemoth, if you will, if you could find the intersection before they did. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And this goes back to what I mentioned earlier, Chris. I mean, it's choice that consumers want. Ultimately, you have to serve the consumer, and the end consumer is in a place where they want choice, convenience, certainty. And I think that being able to offer an iBuyer offer, or something like Homeward's an amazing company that's growing rapidly through cash offers. And I think that the convergence goes beyond just what's happening in our industry, though, Chris. I think it goes into mortgage, title, insurance, and all the other parts of the transaction. And I think that the folks in the mortgage industry are coming after real estate, and the folks in the real estate industry are coming after mortgage. I mean, you've got the juggernauts like Rocket out there in the mortgage space. You got Better, that's about the IPO. I think that what everybody's going after is being able to provide the consumer with choice, but also providing them with a cohesive experience across the transaction. And I think the winner is the one that that's able to do that at scale and provide.
I want to throw an idea at you from a technology perspective. You've got three industry participants in the real estate space. The three major players: mortgage, title, and brokerage. One of the biggest complaints in the industry is communication. And if you've ever done a deal, or how the world works, the agent's got a plethora of things they have to do. Mortgage company has a plethora of things they have to do. Title company has a plethora of things they have to do. They're each operating out of their own operating system. And it's just, there's not enough time in the day for each party to keep each other updated.
Right.
So what is your opinion on some kind of agnostic platform for all of the market participants to create a quasi Slack, if you will, that automatically extracts the task list as they get completed and, updates the consumer and each industry participant? Have you looked into that? Have you had ideas about that?
No, I think it would be an incredibly valuable service. I think that communication through the transaction, and just being a transaction participant as a buyer, or as a seller, that's hugely important. You don't know who to call. I've been in around this industry for 15 years, and going through a recent purchase myself, working with my brother and a couple lenders, it's daunting. It's a daunting task, and that's. That personal experience just recently sticks in my head, Chris. And like we're looking for ways not only to integrate with industry participants on the brokerage side, it's across the segment. And I think that's one piece that, the scale of BoomTown really gives us a lot of, and the quality of the agents that we have within our network puts us at an advantage there as it relates to being able to accomplish something like that. So yes, I think there's a lot of merit to what that to that idea.
All right, man. We only have a few minutes left, so I've got something bold and controversial to ask you.
All right, shoot.
You're on the tech side. You're not affiliated to any real estate brokerage, and this is going to be very controversial, and you may not want to answer, but I'm going to try to pull it out of you. What are your biggest predictions on the brokerage side from your perspective of companies that you think will, just have incredible geometric growth over the years to come? And then who do you think it will be the biggest surprise that ends up falling in the background? And I don't know, I don't want to say shut down, but like they just become, a non-player. They I don't want to use the word fold or bankrupt or whatever, but ultimately start going on the decline?
You can't ask me that, man.
Hey, maybe even call out a non-BoomTown customer.
Well, I mean, listen, we have clients from every single one of these national brokerages or franchises that's out there. I believe.
Hey, Compass,
I'm not.
they've got their own CRM. They're
They
trying
do,
to.
but we have tens, if not more than 100 customers that are BoomTown clients that are Compass agents.
And you
And
got
so
Gary Keller wanting to replace the $1 billion bill that agents
that's right.
spend on tech. So
No, it's.
hey,
Listen,
if you're not going to give me an answer, it's all right. I understand. I appreciate the.
Here's what I'll say, Chris. I believe that the future lies in the ability to consolidate and scale.
Define
Teams.
that. Consolidate. Tell me more.
So I believe that that the bigger an organization gets, the better the talent that they can bring in, right? And the better talent they can bring in, the more scale they can get from the operations that they're doing, the more learnings they can get from how they operate in each individual market. And so when you look at teams that are scaling, into different geographic areas, that gives them a distinct advantage. I think one of the core tenets of a successful brokerage or a successful franchise in the future is one that has a way for people to expand nationally. I think EXP is a great example of that. I think they've done a great job with it, and I think that Keller Williams is sort of looking to head in that direction as well. Side will be set up that way because they're a national brokerage. Compass, I'd say is set up that way as well. I think the national brokerage footprint is going to be important to retain those top teams that are looking to grow their business beyond their current geographic limitations, and just create bigger opportunities for those types of teams. I think independents that have a great culture are going to continue to thrive. You mentioned the Casino Group, my brother's company. They're a well-known local boutique brand that just absolutely dominates the top end of the market here in Charleston. I don't think they're going anywhere. I think they're going to continue to dominate. I'm not going to list anybody specifically in terms of
maybe instead of listing a name, maybe just talk to the service they provide or the general, type of business model they have that you believe is going to end up diminishing and, potentially folding. Like, what does that business model look like?
Yeah, I think those that are not going to keep up the pace with providing agents with the technology and tools to give the consumer the choice that they desire, that support them in being able to provide the consumer with a seamless and transaction experience. The ones that aren't innovating to try to accomplish those things are the ones that will fail. And I think I can't answer the question because it remains to be seen who's not going to go after that, because there are some brokerages out there and national franchises that are making some big moves right now.
Yeah. Cool. Well, to close this out, you're not an agent. You've got a family of agents. The real estate market's on fire. Stocks are on fire. What are you personally investing in?
Yeah, a lot in the market, which has done really well over the past several years. A lot in real estate. Obviously, real estate having given me the opportunity to start this business is another investment vehicle that I leverage a lot. Done some speculative investing in crypto, and done pretty well with that. I don't know what the future lies with there in crypto, but it's been fun to sort of follow that along.
Yeah.
But really my favorite is investing in small startup businesses and backing founders that I believe in and that I can help through some of the stages that we've talked about today on this podcast, Chris.
Grier, man, this has been a great episode. Guys, I hope you picked up your notebook and wrote down a lot of notes, because there were a lot of golden nuggets in there and great little secrets on scaling your business. Grier, thanks so much for being on the show. Best of success to you guys. I love your platform, and super excited about what you guys are doing.
No, thank you for having me, Chris. Thanks for being a loyal customer for the last decade plus.
Yeah.
And yeah, man, really enjoyed the conversation today.
Okay, great. Hey guys, if this is your first time tuning in, hit that subscribe button. You can always watch us on Spotify, iTunes, and all the other streaming services. So be sure to hit that subscribe button. Tune in to us next time. Bye, everybody.